Hey guys, today I have 3 true scary stories to narrate for you. We start with the first true story of the creepy neighbor. Back when we moved into our house, we were introduced to all of our neighbors by them coming to our house with cookies or brownies, like they do in movies. This was a nice, quiet, middle-class neighborhood, made up of mostly older white people and new families. I mention that because we were the only black family in the neighbor. No black wives, husbands, not even adopted children. We didn't find it strange though. It was just very clear that we were different. I was about 13 at the time and my brother was 15. Our backyard is half an acre and is fenced, but it's connected to 2 other houses' backyards. Each one is half the size of ours, but we all have separating fences. So to picture it, there's a T-shaped fence separating our backyards. The house to the left was the home of an older man named Tom. He reminded me of Willie Nelson without the cool pigtails. He liked to be outside shirtless, usually with a denim vest, no matter the weather. He was a well-built man, but visibly kind of frail. We actually found him funny, in a creepy old guy type of way. As I got older, he started to make comments. I played in the backyard with my 2 dogs a lot, and Tom could see me from his living room window that faced his backyard. Whenever I glanced over, I would see him in the window, just standing there, watching me. When he noticed that I saw him, he'd come out and talk to me. I tried to get away before he could come out, but sometimes I was too slow. I didn't want to make it too obvious, so I would just walk. But if I didn't make it inside, he'd yell for me to come back. I never got too close to the fence, I'd speak from a distance. He'd ask me about school, what grade I was in, tell me I was pretty, ask if I was old enough to have a boyfriend, and if I had an older sister or older friends that looked like me. I'd laugh it off. But after a few questions, he'd stop talking and just stare at me, silently. I'd always give an excuse about needing to go inside, he'd nod and stand at the fence and watch me walk back into the house. This happened almost weekly. My mom loves to decorate, so she changes the house decor every few months. Pretty annoying actually. In one of her designing sprees, she decided to get a new sliding glass door for the back porch, which required her to take the curtains down in the living room. It took forever to get them installed, but she figured there was no point in putting the curtains back up if we'd have to take them down again. Fine. Our family TV was in the living room. I didn't have a TV in my room, so I'd oftentimes watch TV, late into the night, in the living room with my brother. One night, my brother went to bed early, so I decided to watch TV by myself. Around midnight or so, I turned the TV off to go to bed. I got up from the couch, turned off the light and turned around to see another light on. Not in my house, but in Tom's house. In his living room. And there he was. Standing in the window. Watching me. I told my parents about it later and they shrugged it off. As my name suggests, I'm an anxious soul, so I oftentimes chalk things up to my anxiety. Fine. Soon after, my dogs started getting sick. I'd take them out to play and they'd start throwing up or having diarrhea. We knew it wasn't their food because we hadn't given them anything new. We threw away the dog treats we'd recently bought, just in case that was the problem. But it didn't stop. I noticed though, that every time I let them out alone, they'd run straight over to Tom's fence, jumping up and down, wagging their tails. He'd slowly walk outside, reach over the fence and feed them his treats, which was odd, because Tom didn't have a dog. I told my parents and my dad went to talk to him, telling him the dogs were getting sick. He apologized, stopped feeding them, and they got better. A few weeks later, I was coming home from high school. My brother was in the grade above me, and I was a senior, so he was in college at the time. When I got home, no one else would be home for a few more hours. I had a routine. Put my book bag upstairs, change clothes, let the dogs out of their cages on the porch, get a snack, and then let them back in. For some reason, I was unusually excited to see my dogs that day, so instead of going upstairs, I went straight to the back porch. I got to the door to open it, and I saw Tom, sitting on the ground in front of my dog's cages. I froze. He didn't see me. I looked over to see if the door was locked. It wasn't. I locked it as slowly as possible, so it didn't make noise. It did. He looked over and saw me standing there. I ran upstairs and called my parents. My mom's a nurse, so she didn't have her phone on, and my dad just never answered the phone. I didn't think it was serious enough to call the police, so I just hid. After a moment, I heard him knock on the door. It wasn't loud or aggressive, though. It was almost friendly. Like, he just wanted to talk. I tried my dad's phone again. He answered. I was crying and telling him Tom was on the porch. He said he'd head home, but he was over an hour away. I just sat in my room, waiting for my dad. The knocking stopped. My dad got home and Tom was gone. I don't know what happened between Tom and my dad, but he stopped coming outside and talking to me. He never stopped watching though. Always standing in his living room. Sometimes, I'd see him through the window and he'd wave at me. But always with the light on, just so I knew he was still there. So a bit of backstory. I'm 18, female from the UK. This happened in February 2019. I was 17 at the time. I got set up on a semi-blind date. We had seen photos of each other, by a mutual friend, and this guy we will call Cameron. He was 19. Cameron seemed like your average guy. Maybe a little into video games and anime and stuff, but overall nothing my friend told me about him seemed off in any way. Our mutual friend gave us each other's numbers and we texted for a night and decided to meet in a Starbucks the next day since we were both free. I never like to meet new people this soon, but I figured since Cameron knew my friend it couldn't possibly go wrong. How mistaken I was. I arrived slightly early, ordered my coffee since I never like guys to feel they have to buy for me, and parked up on a seat facing away from the door and pulled out my book. I'm maybe there for 15 minutes chilling out and I get a text saying Hess here. So I'm like, great, I'm at X table. I feel a presence over my shoulder and I turn my head slightly in acknowledgement. He must be here. Before I even get the chance to squeak out a hello, his lips latch onto my neck and he starts sucking on my neck. Now I don't like people touching my neck at the best of times. I'm very ticklish and I get super uncomfortable by people even touching my neck. The few times I've had massages or hair treatments I've been holding in my discomfort. And Hess latched on my neck like a leech. And this man smells horrendous. Kind of like dust personified. I freak out and elbow his chest to get him the hell off of me. He lets go and looks at me with this weird expression on his face and laughs in deadpan. It's really creepy and I start to become alarmed. I ask him what the hell that was and he just says I thought it was cute. Cute? In what world? I try to have a conversation. I'm like, okay, first impressions don't mean anything, let's try and give him a chance. But he's just creepily staring at my chest. He says, wow. I didn't know Asians could have boobs like those. I better not let you go. Direct quote. I cannot make this shit up. I'm distinctly uncomfortable but I don't want to just run away, Hess giving me really weird vibes. So I go into the ladies' bathroom and wait for someone else to come in. I ask her to help me get out undetected. I don't want this man following me home or some shit. She of course agrees and she lends me her hat and scarf. It is February in the UK after all, and we come out of the bathroom together and she manages to help sneak out of the back door of the Starbucks without him noticing me. He asked my friend where I went but I told my friend to never mention me again. I was too terrified. I know I probably didn't behave well, I should have just told him I was leaving, but I was honestly just scared. It all started with window tapping. I lived in a good area, but literally on the border of a different city that was deemed bad. Near my home after all of this happened, I had found out there was basically a swarm of child sex offenders in the 7-mile radius into the neighboring city. Moving on. Late at night I would hear tapping on my window. I never checked, because no one just showed up at my window. I had lots of friends back then, but they all knew to call me first. As it kept happening, I kept getting more and more worried. I was about 15. My boyfriend at the time when I was a sophomore began sneaking to my house for the night. One of those nights I heard the tapping, but it was way too soon for it to be him. But it was enough that it sounded like it was to be expected. I had just gotten off the phone with him maybe 10 minutes prior to this. My bed is directly next to my window at this time, and those windows were shit and had a wicked draft. Anyone outside next to the window would have been able to hear my conversation clearly. I called my boyfriend back and asked if he was outside, and he said no. I told him to turn around and go home, and texted him what happened. He tried to convince me it was nothing and it was my mind playing tricks on me. I started noticing being followed a couple times a week, but never all the way home or for too long when I would walk home at night. I had to get home by 11 if I was walking, 10 on a school night, so it's not like I was out at a crazy hour. It freaked me out enough to the point I didn't wear headphones anymore at night and was constantly watching my back. On to the very strange occurrences. These are the three that are most prominent, and in my eyes, most creepy. I was in my sophomore year of HS and my boyfriend snuck to my house, and was asleep. It was about 3 a.m. He had just gone to bed probably an hour or so earlier. I still had a small light on and my window was open because I was smoking a cigarette. I heard this creepy whistle that went from high-pitched to low-pitched. Like oh, kind of like a slow sing-song. I was looking and I saw what looked to be an average build and seemed kinda tall, standing on the corner of my property watching me. I freaked out, and slammed my window, drew the blinds and hit the light. I didn't sleep that night and I kept hearing rustling around near my window. There was a flower bed right under my window. 16. Junior year, same boyfriend. He was the same height and roughly same weight as me. We easily looked the same from the back at night. Anyways, my boyfriend is coming through the neighbor's backyard, and into mine. He comes up to the window and as he's about 3/4 of the way in, I hear heavy boots in the grass. I look up and as my boyfriend is in the room completely, I see either a masked or hooded man about 3 feet from my completely wide open window. I slammed my window immediately and freaked out. My boyfriend said he didn't know if he was being followed or not. This is where I was 100% convinced that the weird shit that was happening for that last 1.5-ish years was not coincidental or random or completely unrelated to me. It was directed at me. I was the center of the weird shit. At this point I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to tell my parents. If I told them that part of it, I'd get in trouble for sneaking my boyfriend into my room. But at the same time, some dude literally either A, thought my BF was me and was going to grab me before I got into my room, or B, was going to jump into my room after me and do whatever he was intending to do that night. 3. The final incident, and the part that is equally as unsettling as the last one. I was sleeping one night. I was a month or two from turning 17. It was summer, hotter than hell, and I kept my door closed because I smoked pot and cigarettes, so the AC did not make its way into my room. Anyways, I was asleep in these tiny little shorts and a sports bra. I was facing the window, and my bed at the time was right up against it. I woke up to the brightest flash of light. I jumped up, obviously freaked out, and heard running from the flower bed, to the grass, and to the pavement of my driveway. I saw the motion flood light go off, but could barely see anything because the flash had blinded me that badly. I don't know whatever happened after that. The window tapping stopped, the following stopped, no more flashes of light, no more whistling. It was just over. It still freaks me out that some weirdo has a photo of my underage self in minimal clothing, asleep in my room. It's probably online and it's really quite unsettling and still keeps me up at night on occasion. This happened yesterday after I finished the night shift at around 3 a.m. I work at a store of a big fast food chain to pay for my university. Our staff changes frequently because of a lot of students and migrants working at our place. So you don't get to know each other very well. Everybody has their own social life and it is very, very rare for coworkers to establish friendships outside working hours. Still, you know the people on your shift and the night shift has particularly few workers. One of my coworkers, Jasser, started to get interested in me. Not that I noticed. I am young and dumb, like being friendly and, important for later, have a hard time saying no. In December 2019 our store threw a Christmas party at a pub. I went and had a great time, but I also made plans for later that night. Because of that I wanted to leave early, which made Jasser also want to leave early despite the fact he neither needed nor planned it beforehand, which made me uncomfortable. Unfortunately he didn't know how to get to the train station and I did, so I couldn't say no and just let him tag along. When we arrived at the train station it came to light there was no train he could take to get home. None. He did not check beforehand, he did not ask me, he just wanted to tag along, with me. Super uncomfortable. Instead of taking the train to the main station, he got into my train and only got out when I insisted he changes trains at another big station. But oh boy. That was not the train of the title. In January 2020 Jasser asked me out for coffee and I agreed. I thought he just wants friends. He doesn't have any and can only rely on his co-workers. If something happens I can just nope out. And so I went. First it was okay-ish. We mostly talked about work-related stuff. Because we don't share any hobbies, we are not the same age and we don't have the same mother tongue. Jasser didn't like talking about work and nothing more. He started talking about how different I was from other coworkers, how nice of a person I am and how good my charisma is. Then he asked if we could get to know each other better. I genuinely didn't want to and still don't. Jasser is not my type. Neither as a person nor from his looks. Especially his looks, even if I sound superficial. While I am in my early 20s, Jasser is at least in his early 30s. I have no problem with age gaps, a story for another subreddit. but I am not attracted to men that dress like teenagers. Instead of telling Jasser a straight no, I told him I was not interested in having a boyfriend. He didn't take that seriously and told me I would change my mind. I told him I wouldn't. He, again, was not really on board with that opinion, so I elaborated my opinion 3 times in German and 1 time in English to get it very clear. He always changes to English if he does not get something or thinks he misunderstood, even if he heard it clearly and just does not like it. I mean, obviously my opinion is gonna change if I explain it in English rather than German. We left the conversation with him still not convinced and me being really not interested in a second meeting. He quit soon after and I foolishly assumed I was free. But whenever he came to my workplace to place an order he would ask me out to eat something. And every time I would postpone whatever I said the last time, because of finals, because of travel, because of anything I could get my hands on. Then came COVID-19 that hit Germany in March and I didn't see him anymore. I blocked him on social media in April and hoped that was the last thing to happen. But oh boy. That was not the case. Today I finished my shift at 3 a.m. and left with my female and very Asian co-worker, Wei, to catch the next train. We take different trains, so we decided to wait in the main lobby until I need to go to my platform. In that time Jasser appeared. He just finished his shift and was on his way home. Wei asked him which train he needed to get and he said he was walking home. While the conversation went on, I got closer to Wei to get some space between me and Jasser. Wei did not grasp how uncomfortable I was in this situation and she just walked away. What did Jasser do? He placed himself between me and Wei. Right in my vision line. Every fiber in my body felt how he barged into my personal space. I decided I could not take a private conversation with him and said, "Oh, look. I need to go to my platform." To end it, but Jasser followed me. Through the main lobby, through the train station, into the elevator and into the train. I was internally screaming and walked through the train until I saw another passenger. I sat down in the row of seats next to me and Jasser followed. As if every bit of luck had just left me, the other passenger moved seats and went away, so I was back alone. Jasser talked and I showed clear signs of not wanting to continue the conversation. I hoped he would leave before the train departed, but he didn't. Mind you, the train goes in the opposite direction of his house and is 1 hour walking distance to my workplace. There is no way in hell this man could get anything out of taking the train except following me and continuing the conversation. I was freaked out and told him in English he was acting very weird. Maybe I should have used a different word, but English is not my first language and at that point I only thought about escaping. I could not let him see my station or he could easily find my home. I don't live rural, but at 3 a.m. there is nobody on the streets, so him following me home was terrifying. I thought about getting off a station earlier, but then I would need to get a cab, for which I did not have cash on me, or I needed to walk the rest and he could still follow. I decided to get up at the next station, let him get out of the train first and then just stay inside while the doors close. It fortunately worked. But only after telling him clear this was not my station, I would not get out and he would not get back in. I even held my hand out to stop him from coming back. He stayed outside after the conductor shouted at us to let the door close. So let's rewind, he is way older than me, but does not get the concept of me not wanting to be in a relationship with him. Whenever he does not like an answer, he switches to English, because it just might be a misunderstanding. He followed me 2 times into my train and almost home, without even thinking about how creepy that behavior is. So, Jasser, let's not meet again. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe.